Yeah, so Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is the sequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, all of which are in some way a prequel to Planet of the Apes. Rise of the Planet of the Apes was 2011 and was very good. Rupert Wyatt, I thought, did a terrific job of it. Very good motion capture, using the skills of Andy Serkis to basically tell the story of the rise of a super intelligent race of apes, and at the end of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, you basically get the apes going off into the woods, into Muir Woods outside San Francisco, and we see there's a footnote which is about the outbreak of a virus, a simian flu as it's called, which is going to ravage the human population. We now move 10 years forward. The apes have basically set up their own civilization, living in the woods, living quite peacefully, living in the belief that in fact the human race is no longer there to trouble them. It has been 10 winters, we are told at one point, since they have seen a human. Then, completely unexpectedly, they come across a group of virus-resistant survivors, and immediately there is trigger-happy tragedy, and the two groups, the apes and the humans, are confronting each other and having to decide how, if at all, they will continue to live together. Will it be jaw-jaw, or will it be war-war? Here's a clip.
Apes! Do not want war, but will fight if we must. Ape home! Human home! Do not come back.
So essentially, this was originally going to be directed by Rupert Wyatt. He then left because he was worried that there wasn't enough time to do the film properly. Now Matt Reeves has directed it, who directed Cloverfield and did a terrific job. There's been a rewrite on the script that Rupert Wyatt was originally attached to. What you're left with is a film which draws some elements from the original Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, some elements, of course, from Battle for the Planet of the Apes. On the plus side, the motion capture, performance capture work is absolutely terrific. They've made quite a lot of the fact that they managed to do a great amount of motion capture shooting on location rather than doing it all in studios. And it does seem to have added to the veracity of the characters. I mean, you really get a sense of these being rounded characters, of Caesar, the central character played by Andy Serkis, of Koba, his sort of originally friend, but then increasingly his rival, played by Toby Kebbell. You really do get the sense that these are fully rounded three-dimensional characters. And if you think about the original series, it did take them 3 films to start seeing the world through the ape's eyes. What's happened with the rising technology is that it's enabled the movie to essentially look at the world through the ape's eyes rather than seeing it as a story which is always refracted through human eyes. And I think they've done that very well. The action sequences, when they come, are terrifically well done, not least because the filmmakers constantly keep their eye on character. There's always this knowledge that let's compare it to a Michael Bay movie. Michael Bay, who just seems to treat all his audiences as essentially stupid and thinks that all you need to do is blow things up, ever increasing explosion, that will be exciting. What's happening here is the filmmakers understand that character is everything. You have to care about the people, you have to care about the characters, you have to be involved in their stories. The story is also planned out quite meticulously as sort of mirror images. So on both sides of the species divide, you have the war camp and the peace camp. So on the one hand, in the ape side, you have Caesar and his partner Cornelia and their son Blue Eyes, and then their younger baby. On the other side, you have a sort of human comparison. You have a nuclear family of a father, a mother, a son, and on both sides of the divide, they want peace. You also have, on the one hand, Koba, on the other hand, Gary Oldman's character, Dreyfus, who are sort of the warmongering elements. And so what you get is infighting within each of the species. And what the film does, therefore, is it sort of follows this discussion about peace versus war, about living separately or fighting for territory. Now, there is a whole sort of discussion about the fact that this has to move somehow toward an end point, which is Planet of the Apes. But what the movie does so far is to look more at the kind of the balance and to say, okay, well, on either side, there is the peace camp and there is the war camp. And it does that very well. I do have some reservations. One of them is that, there are... The female roles are not great, and certainly as the action sequences increase, the kind of anguished mothers tend to sort of fall by the wayside, and I think that is a problem. And there's not really much of an excuse for that problem. It doesn't have to be that way. Funnily enough, if you look at the original Planet of the Apes sequence, it wasn't necessarily true of all those films. Also, there's a certain amount of loss of will in enabling the apes to talk as much as they do. I mean, obviously, the whole thing about Caesar saying no, which dates right back to the original Planet of the Apes sequence, just using, one word was really, really shocking. What happens at the beginning of this film is that we see the apes essentially communicating through sign language. As the drama increases, they start to talk more and more, and it's clear that there's a tension between what you'd actually like them to do, which is to be talking in sign language, because why would they need to be talking? And talking because that's what the cinema demands. In fact, one of the writers has talked about that as very specifically a conflict they think they found their way through. I think as the drama goes on, it relies too much on the apes talking. I was much happier, to be honest, when they were communicating through sign language. But these are essentially minor reservations. I think that what they've done is once again demonstrate that it's possible to make an intelligent blockbuster, to take a fancy franchise and reinvent it, do something sensible with it, to refer back to the originals and understand that you appreciate all the themes, right from Pierre Boulle's sort of Swiftian satirical novel right through the entire Planet of the Apes movie sequence, which dealt with apartheid and racism and nuclear destruction and war versus diplomacy and slavery and revolution and ultimately some kind of resolution. All those things were in the originals. I still hold that you can learn everything you need to know about politics from the first 5 Planet of the Apes movies. And I think this does a pretty good job of continuing that tradition. The only other thing I'd say as a possible level of anxiety is the technology is very cutting edge, and I suspect that in a few years' time, technology advancing as fast as it does, some of the wobblier edges of the CG won't have dated quite so well. But for the moment, it's a smart, intelligent, proper blockbuster that demonstrates that you don't have to talk down to people to get a mass audience to enjoy a film.